Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Comic Source. I'm your host, Jace. We're here today to talk about a really interesting book. I got a chance to read the second volume. Actually, I got a chance to read both volumes, and the writer is joining me today. It's my pleasure to welcome Richard Ashkley Hamilton to the show. Richard, thanks for taking the time.
Thank you. The pleasure's all mine. Thanks for reading both books and still wanting to talk to me afterwards.
Yeah, and you have another book coming up in December that I'm excited to check out as well. But we're going to cover these as well. And actually, what we're going to do, everybody, do it just slightly different because the second book just came out, the second volume of Scoop. So it's out there. I'm sure you can find the first volume as well. But I want to dig into the second one first because it's so interesting. And then we'll kind of do a flashback and talk about the second. So why don't you give the elevator pitch, Richard? What is Scoop, and specifically the second volume? I kind of want to hear how you introduce it to the audience here.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, at the highest level, just Scoop as a series is sort of like Veronica Mars meets X-Files. It's about Sophie Cooper, who is a Cuban American 15-year-old girl living in my hometown of Miami, Florida. Her dad was accused of a crime he didn't commit. He's vilified in the news. There hasn't been a trial yet, but in all the news, everyone thinks that her dad is just guilty as sin. The only person who believes he's innocent is Sophie. And so she thinks if the news kind of made her dad out to be a bad guy, then maybe the news can help clear his name. So she interns at a TV news station in Miami. Spoiler, they're the worst. They're super inept. They make, I don't know, MSNBC look like Newsmax, let's say. But and even weirder still, just when she's an intern, she stumbles upon this sci-fi conspiracy that's been going on in South Florida all along. UFOs, time travel, ghosts, chupacabras, you name it, they're all real and all somehow connected to her dad's case. So if she can prove all this weird sci-fi stuff is real, she can clear her dad's name, she gets her normal life back. So that's kind of like the through line in the whole series of Scoop. When we meet Sophie in volume 2, Buried Leads, she's just sort of, it's coming off of her first big break as a junior reporter. She revealed something at the end of volume 1 and kind of exposed to the world that maybe there is this kind of weird supernatural stuff happening in the shadows. And so she's feeling, I don't know, maybe a little full of herself, a little more full of herself than she should be. And she starts to think, well, if that conspiracy is true, then maybe every other conspiracy out there is true. And because she's kind of had this big break in sort of partially clearing her dad's name, another sort of disgraced celebrity comes out of the woodwork, very much an O.J. Simpson type. And he says to Sophie, hey, the way you're clearing your dad's name, can you help me out? Can you help me find the real killer of my ex-wife? Because I've been blamed for her death and I didn't do it. And everyone in Sophie's life is telling her, do not take this case. This is super dangerous and toxic and just bad news. But she sort of has, in a weird way, paradoxically, she has blinders on for the truth. The truth is her North Star. She's always looking for that. And she thinks that maybe this disgraced celebrity has denied his truth. And so that's kind of like the A plot. The sort of background plot is her furthering her investigations into the paranormal in South Florida. And she gets to meet a whole other new host of characters. We met some alligator men in volume 1. In volume 2, we meet a guy named the Mangrove Man, who is sort of like a Swamp Thing type character. We get to visit some UFO wreckage. We find some crop circles and a whole bunch of other little goodies to horrify and delight Sophie.
Yeah, and she's such an easy character to root for. And yeah, when she has her successes in volume 1, there can be a risk, I suppose, as a writer or us as readers have seen her kind of as a Mary Sue. She can do nothing wrong. Certainly at that age, she's right around 14, 15. You're not, you don't have the life experiences. You can make mistakes. You can be too trusting, that sort of thing. So interesting in volume 2 that you introduced this idea that, yeah, she doesn't, as much as she is very capable and probably the smartest person in the room, at least when she's at that particular news station, she still is young. She still is learning. So was that something specifically you wanted to to put out there in volume 2 that, hey, as much as she was, fantastic and a real heroine in volume 1, she is still human. She can still make mistakes. This is, character growth and evolving, and, she's going to have her ups and downs.
And that was absolutely the intention, and I'm so gratified to hear that worked for you. I'm a parent. I've got 2 boys. One is 16, so just around Sophie's age, and the other's about to turn 13. And I'm always trying to tell them, like, we all make mistakes. It's, what we do when we make that mistake, do we learn from it or not? And, when I was a kid, if I made a mistake in school, I was sort of made to feel like a dunce, like it was really punitive if you, got a bad grade or didn't understand something. And I've done some work writing wise in the STEM fields lately, and I'm so happy to see that the approach now, by and large, is like if you make a mistake or you have a failure, it's actually a good thing because it's taking you one step closer to the right answer. So I wanted to apply that to Sophie, and I wanted to show that she's just as fallible as everyone else. And part of that was like, hopefully to provide a more realistic role model to maybe some of our younger readers, but also selfishly for me, that makes a way more interesting character if they have flaws. And we have right now 4 volumes of Scoop. Volume 2 just came out, 3 and 4 come out next year. And the most exciting thing for me in each one of them isn't necessarily like the sci-fi stuff. It is just seeing how is this 15, almost 16-year-old girl handling these extraordinary circumstances, and what does she get right and what does she get wrong? And when she does get something wrong, how does she recover from it? I just think that makes a cooler hero.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if she's perfect, then I don't have a way to relate to her. And also, it removes agency from her in a way. Like if she knows she can do no wrong, like where's the bravery in taking a risk or taking a chance if she knows she's always going to succeed? So not only does it make it more interesting for us as readers, but like you said, more relatable, especially with these books coming out through the Maverick line, where they're sort of aimed at younger readers. With her interest in journalism and pursuing the truth, as far as I know, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you've always been a writer. Where do you intersect with Sophie? Like, where are you in her, or maybe you're not very much, and it's more your sons that you were talking about. But where's your in?
No, this book, this series has gotten more autobiographical as time has gone on in a very surprising way that makes me feel very, very vulnerable. But when I was a teenager growing up in Miami, I had an internship at CNN.
Okay.
I was a film student, and so I wanted to work on movie sets, but there really wasn't much going on in Miami at that time. And my parents, through a friend of a friend, got me to intern at CNN, and they were like, "Isn't that great? They've got cameras too. It's like the same thing." And I was like, "I'm not interested." But, I went, and my first day on the job, no joke, was the same day that Gianni Versace, the fashion designer, was murdered in South Beach in his home. And so on my first day, I walked into the bureau, and like a minute later, all the phones lit up, and the producer who I was interning for just said, like, "You new kid, get in the news van, go learn something." And so I got to ride down the news van. We pulled up right in front of his home on Ocean Drive. His body was still out there, covered in a sheet. It was really, it was horrific. It was exciting. It was all those things. And so I ever since then, I was bitten by the journalism bug, I guess. And the challenge for me has been to harken back to that. And since you've read volume 1, there's a storyline that very much
Right.
is based on that. But I never wanted to exploit that tragedy or make light of it. And I've always tried to, just in a way, I'm always trying to humanize Sophie as a character. The victims of crimes, and also the sort of the leftover collateral damage, their loved ones, their friends, their family members. I always like to show what the impact of these crimes are on them long term, because I, just think that's kind of like the more honest, more realistic way to go.
Yeah, and then obviously she shares your sort of cultural heritage, which reflects in the family dynamic. I imagine to some extent relationship with parents and that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, my dad was never on house arrest for a
Right.
crime. That's one divergence, but yeah, my mom was born in Cuba, just like Sophie's. She came over when she was 7 in 1960, and in fact, the Volume 3 plot really, again, just to make this even more biographical or autobiographical, really like taps into that. So we have that element of it coming up. But I also have a little brother named Christopher. Sophie's little brother's name is Kit. It's a nickname for Chris. And her little brother and mine were both like real kind of tech prodigies. And my brother was always monkeying around with gear and figuring out how cameras worked and stuff like that. And so I've made Sophie's little brother kind of like the Q to her James Bond, and he's always building cool little gadgets for her to help her in her various supernatural investigations.
Yeah, so I love that you think of him as Q because that's, I mean, we could have thought of him as anything, right? Like um I can't remember like the sidekick to the Punisher. I can't remember. Microchip, I think his name
Oh, my
was.
God. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Or any number of guys who have filled that role. Chris Christopherson in the Blade movies. But I specifically got the Q vibe. That is who I pictured him. So that's so interesting that you mentioned that. The differences between 1 and 2. So the first volume, everybody's a little bit longer. The second one, as we mentioned, kind of brings Sophie back down to earth a little bit after her successes in the first volume. The other thing about it is there's a lot of plates spinning. You mentioned several plots going on at the same time, which I love because it harkens back to kind of the more long form comics of when I was a kid. Um, but we could have had, I think, just volume 1 could have, even though it didn't really tie up everything, I feel like it could have stood alone more so. This one feels like we're really setting up for the next chapter a little bit more. So can you talk about that development process? Was it a case of you didn't know if you were going to get more than one volume initially? Or did it just feel like, okay, I'm setting everything up, I'm introducing it's the first volume, I'm going to kind of try to stick everything in there, and then as we go along, we're going to kind of focus in on certain aspects as it goes along.
It was kind of both, to be honest. In full transparency, Scoop originated at another publisher,
Mm,
Insight Editions, almost a decade ago. And so I knew, I only knew I was going to get to the first volume. So yeah, I sort of kitchen sinked it, like,
right. Yeah.
and wanted it to be standalone, but leave the door open for future stories. And then we were able to do volume 2 over there, but it was, basically right at the start of the pandemic. And so that changed, the publisher changed, the industry changed. And I thought we were going to do volume 3 there, and we weren't. And although I was very happy with sort of the quality of the books, they just, Insight was not in a position because of their business and just because of the world, nobody really knew about it. But fortunately, I met Mark Irwin over there. He was my editor on Scoop at Insight, and now he is, I forget his title because he keeps getting promoted, but he's basically the president at Mad Cave and
Right.
Maverick. And so he's been a Scoop fan all along and was really happy to bring it there. And uh, also Mad Cave is based out of Miami. Scoop is set in Miami. I'm from Miami. It just was like felt like coming home in a way. And then, knowing that Mad Cave and Maverick were going to invest in Scoop, not just reprinting volumes 1 and 2, but doing volumes 3 and 4, and also sort of repackaging and remastering 1 and 2. Once I knew that, and I knew that they had my back, I was able to sort of go back in and sort of make the story feel a little more continuous between 2 and 3 and 4. So now, like, it's one thing when you write a book and you're not quite sure if there's going to be another one. And I like my endings to be a little ambiguous, but I also don't want to be totally frustrating for the reader. Like when they
Right.
get to the end, like, that's it. So, volume 2 definitely, like if volume 2 said the end on the last page, I would expect people to be very pissed off. I know I
Right.
would be, but
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
do say it leads directly into volume 3, and it kind of picks up in a really cool way. So I don't know if that answered your
No,
your
yeah,
question.
that's exactly what I was wondering. It makes a lot of sense because, as I said, one feels a little more standalone. Obviously, there are some through lines, but yeah, like you said, like if this was the end of two, I'd be like, no, 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 I need more, I need more.
Good, I'm
Yeah,
glad.
yeah. I mean, like I said, because Sophie's such an easy character to root for, but it's not just Sophie. It's so many of the other supporting characters, whether it be her parents, her brother, her mentor at the newsroom, Hal,
Yeah.
who is awesome, just a great character. What's the background with him? Because so everybody, we don't want to spoil too much, but he's this supposedly veteran news guy who, to hear his tall tales, has broke every story from Iran Contra to Watergate to O.J. Simpson, like all of them. He was
Yeah.
a part of it. So talk a little bit about the inspiration for that character.
Yeah, he's based on two real newsmen. One of them was a guy at CNN who sort of took me under his wing. His stage name was Bob Vito. I think his real name was Roberto Viverito, Italian guy. But he was a guy who all like the claiming credit for every big news story over the past century.
Yeah.
Definitely Bob Vito, who like was saying like how he broke this story, broke that story, and just as a kid, I remember doing the math and being like, that's impossible,
Right. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Woodward and Bernstein were the ones who broke
Yeah.
Watergate. They made a whole movie about him.
Yeah.
But he was a really nice guy, and he showed an interest in me, even though like I went into CNN totally cold and didn't know the first thing about journalism. But he saw something in me and encouraged me, and that just meant a lot to me as a kid. So part of this is loving tribute to him. And then I've lived in Los Angeles for about half of my life. And there's a great reporter who passed away probably about a decade ago now. His name was Hal Fishman. And he's sort of the other half of our Hal Ritz. And sort of like the real like journalistic integrity, and a guy who really cared about stories and got the facts right and really just treated it like a true profession. That aspect of our Hal scoop comes from Hal Fishman. God rest his soul. He was a good guy.
Yeah, I do sort of want. I mean, I feel like in a way, news media these days gets a little bit of a bad rap. With the advent of social media and this sort of instant connection that we have worldwide, reporting the news has become more challenging. Plus the fact that you can give people the facts. There's a segment of people out there you can give them the facts. You can show them all the scientific evidence you want, and they're still not going to believe you. So. I get it, and also we're in a country that's entering late stage capitalism, so you got to keep the lights on. So I think it's more challenging than ever. Where's the challenge for you? Because I'm sure there are young readers out there who maybe don't aspire to be a journalist the way they might have 20 or 30 years ago, but certainly this idea of, hey, I want to make a difference, I want to be out there, sharing a presence online, that sort of thing. So. Again, I'm sure there's readers out there who are looking to be inspired. Does that factor in at all? Is it something you think about?
Yeah, it definitely weighs heavily on me. I mean, I take that as a tremendous responsibility. And it sort of to go back to your earlier question about like Sophie having sort of feet of clay in volume two. I think the other part of that was to show that, even journalists or even TV reporters, your anchors on the nightly news, they're all people.
Mm-hmm.
And make mistakes and they try real hard if they're good at their job to get the facts right, but sometimes they get them wrong. And if they're responsible, they'll do an error and a retraction or they'll update their story. But they're all people. So there's the human side of it that I want to make sure that we reflect. But I also if somebody reads Scoop and they want to pursue a career in journalism, I applaud that and I think that's great and I wish them luck. I think it's a difficult career. I think it's more dangerous now than ever because of this advent of misinformation. But really, I like the one takeaway I want people to have when they read this is to just think critically. And, some people will tell you like, this is definitely true. Like a lot of people in Sophie's life are telling her dad is guilty as sin. But there's sort of like an inner voice, a truth in her that she's following. And she's like, that doesn't sound right to me. I need to investigate that on my own. I need to do my due diligence. And that's really what Scoop is her going down that journey. And then we've just added in aliens and chupacabras and stuff. But
Yeah, time travel.
yeah, just to do a little window dressing on it. But I think journalism is really fascinating. I think it's essential now more than ever, and I really do hope there's a new generation that comes into it, not for the sort of clickbait, instant gratification aspects of it, but more for just we as a species have always needed someone to sort of like be fact checkers and keep us in line and make sure that people see the whole story, not just little details in isolation. And the current young generation are pretty amazing. They're always impressing me. I count my kids in that. I'm biased, but I think they've been able sort of the aptitude they've shown for vigilance and advocacy so far in their lives, I think bodes well for the future of journalism.
Yeah, I agree completely. We see eye to eye, and my daughter's around that same age as well. And one of the things that we always stress with her is that critical thinking. Like, it doesn't matter where you get your information. You need to go and you should be getting it from multiple sources. You should vet it out yourself. Make up
Yep.
your own mind. But at the end of the day, I think the most important thing is to be educated, right? And that doesn't mean just go to school, but it means, yeah, when you hear a news story, go and read about it again from multiple sources. Make up your own mind. That's how we kind of pull ourselves out of this place that we're at. But you got to be
Yeah.
willing. You got to be willing to listen to both sides and try to gather the facts. So yeah, I'm glad to hear that is a factor as you're writing this. The other thing in terms of character, again, a great supporting cast. I think Hal might be my favorite, but I don't know, Kit is great too. But the other thing, and again, this goes back to you personally, is the setting as a character, which is a bit of a cliche at times, but it certainly
Sure.
is true here. And if anybody's watching us on YouTube rather than the audio feed, you can see the cover that I have here for Volume 2, Buried Leads, which very much reflects the kind of the color palette that people associate with Miami's, those bright neons and pinks and what have you. So the setting itself, Miami itself, is very much a character, which I'm sure having lived half your life there, very familiar with it. Talk about setting it there as opposed to doing it in L.A. or maybe New York, other big media places, and how much that speaks to you and your formative years.
Yeah, I mean, just to what you said, like I remember telling my editors, like I know it's a cliche, everyone says like the city is the character, but in Scoop, Miami really is a character. And although I lived there the first half of my life, it's a very different city than it is now. I'm or a very different city now than it
Right.
was when I was living there. And every time I go and visit family, I'm reminded of that. So we do a lot of reference and a lot of research, and our artists on the interior, Pablo and Simon, take all that and process it and make it feel, in my opinion, very authentic, but not like it's not like photo bashing or anything. It's like it has its own personality. And then Inaki Miranda does all the covers for Scoop. And yeah, he's sort of taken that palette and that kind of vibe that people associate with Miami and just blown it out on all four of these images, and they look really nice all lined up together. Nobody else has seen the other covers. I got to see they look good together. And like I guess for the setting, I mean, they always say that thing about write what you know. And, when I started out writing, I just tried to write things that I thought were going to appeal to the most people, stories that had like general appeal. And they became like so vague as to appeal to no one. And just sort of what I discovered, especially working on Scoop for like the better part of 15 years, is the more specific you make it, that actually makes it the most relatable to everyone. And so, really leaning into the setting, into her Cuban heritage, into like the unique, weird dynamics of her family. It's fun for me to write, and just anecdotally, the feedback I've gotten from people at signings and conventions is like, it speaks to them, even if they've never set foot in Miami, even if they're not, a fraction of Cuban blood in them or whatever. Like, it's just that the specificity of Sophie's journey somehow strikes a chord with them too. And then the kind of the last part of it was I have this fantasy that one day they'll make a Scoop movie or TV show, and they'll of course have to set it and film it in Miami. And although as a kid I couldn't get an internship on a movie or TV show when I was in film school, maybe the next generation will be able to work on Scoop and make it that much better because they'll be bringing their personal perspective to it.
Oh wow, that's an incredible goal. That's really cool. Um, the other thing that you've thrown in here, and it's very mild, everybody. In no way is this a romance, but Sophie is at that age where you know, if you're a boy or a girl, you start noticing the opposite sex, sometimes the same sex. That's fine too. But you start having these feelings, and you know, she's got a couple of admirers, and yeah, I found that to be interesting as well. Because again, like you were saying, the specificity of it, I remember back to that age and having those feelings, and you know, you don't have the relationship experience, you don't know how to navigate it. It's scary and it's exciting, and I think you've captured that really well. Also, have you had any fans or any feedback about that part of the story specifically?
Only a little bit. So Sophie's got it in the middle of what we call a clean teen love triangle,
Right.
or Bermuda love triangle. And the two guys that she's interested in, one of them, his name is Milo. He's a big old dork. He's the head of their high school's AV club,
Yep.
and he's a camera expert, so he can help Soph review footage and find out if it's been altered or doctored or if it's legit. And then the other guy who's caught her fancy, his name's Usnavi. He's Cuban, and he interns at the Miami-Dade Police Department. So they have this kind of internship connection, and he's able to sneak her into crime scenes and give her a whole bunch of evidence that he really shouldn't be doing and is, borderline against the law, but, it's cute. So we go with it. I will say this love triangle definitely takes some twists and turns heading into the third volume. So hopefully everyone will come along with us for that one. I think we have some good surprises, and I don't know. I would say Usnavi is the boy I always wanted to be. Milo is the guy I probably was in high school, but I try and subvert expectations with each of them. They both have their strengths and weaknesses, and it's a real toss-up for Soph. They're both really good guys. They're both crazy about her, and she wants to do right by both of them. But yeah, she's like starting to discover all that while balancing school and her family drama and this internship and, evil beings coming out of the woodwork trying to get her. So, like you're saying before, a lot of spinning plates. And no, I don't, we haven't like run a poll online or anything, but I do know within Maverick, we definitely have a team Milo and we definitely have a team Usnavi. And I'm curious to see how the balance shifts going into volumes 3 and 4.
And I don't even know which team I'd be on. I like them both for different reasons. Yeah, I can see what you're saying about the cool guy you wish you were, and the guy, kind of the more nerdy guy you probably were. Especially
for sure.
me collecting comics and what have you way back then. So yeah, I'm not sure. I'd have to maybe think about it more, or maybe ask me after I've read all 4, and I might be able to pick a team.
I'll do that.
But everybody, it's a great story. Highly recommend it for young readers. It's one of these books that I think makes a great bedtime story, something you can share if you're trying to get your kids to read and what have you. You can read it together at bedtime, and probably before you know it, they're going to be reading ahead because they want to get to the story. So volumes 3 and 4 are coming next year. Is that what you said earlier?
Yeah, that's right. It looks like volume 3 in the spring of 25 and volume 4 in fall of 25. And yeah, volume 3 has been sent to the printers. It looks amazing. It's almost like a first volume in a way because it's the first time that our artists Pablo and Simon, Dave Lanfear, our amazing editor or letterer, they've all started working together from page 1, panel 1. In the previous volumes, people kind of came at different times, but everyone's starting from scratch from the ground up, and it really shows. It's a beautiful book. I'm really, really proud of it. I won't speak to the story, but the art is insane. And yeah, volume 4 we're working on right now. And, Christina Harrington is our editor. She's fantastic. And Mike Martz is overseeing everything as the editor-in-chief. And they're keeping me honest, and all their notes make the story better. And, I hope everyone else feels that way. Again, I know I'm kind of biased.
Yeah, we'll have to have you back on to talk about volume 3 when the time is right. And before
Definitely.
before we get to the end of the year, everybody, Richard has another book coming out. that I want to give them a chance to let everybody know what it's about. Coming out in December, I think the publishing date is December 10th, 2024. It's called Tectiv. And why don't you let our audience know what it's about, Richard?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of another teen girl mystery story, but a very different one. It's set in a post-post-apocalyptic version of Los Angeles, and it's about a girl named Bingo Finder. She's a scavenger. There's not much left of society after this kind of big cataclysm. We sort of thread clues throughout the story of what that might have been and what might have precipitated it. But Bingo is an orphan and just kind of fends for herself, but she has one really good friend, a girlfriend of hers who goes missing. And this post-apocalyptic world is presented as a utopia to everyone. It's supposed to be post-crime, post-racial, post-everything. But when somebody goes missing, nobody knows what to do about it since there's been no crimes, there's been no police, no one to investigate it. But Bingo, being a scavenger, her favorite thing to find are these old things called books. And she's the only person in her village, maybe even in the world, who's still literate. And so she's able to read them. And her favorite are these detective novels. But they're all worn and beat up because they're so old. So all that's left of the word detective on the cover is just Tectiv. And she thinks, oh, well, that's what I'm going to become. I'm going to be like one of these detectives. I'm going to put on a trench coat and a hat and go and find my friend. And it starts out simple enough, but she uncovers a vast criminal conspiracy under this purported utopia in sort of true noir fashion. The digger she deeps, the more skeletons she finds. And because it's this whacked out future world, we have giant talking coyotes, robot cults, all kinds of other mutants, basically like everything you've liked from every post-apocalyptic story from Mad Max through Blade Runner and beyond. We have versions of that in our world. So it's just, it's a scary place, but the artist on it is a guy named Marco Matrone. We did a book together a couple years ago called Fear Book Club. He's an incredible artist, and it's a wild landscape, but it is absolutely beautiful. It's really stunning artwork, and his character acting is great. And we just can't wait for people to see this book. We're excited about it, and starting to get some early reviews in, and they've been positive. So that's a good feeling.
Yeah, what were some of the inspirations for it? And specifically, why I ask is I want people, if they're a fan of one of these specific inspirations, we certainly want them to check it out. So what were some of the things that kind of got this story and got your imagination going for this world?
Yeah, well, I mean, for sure, sort of, I was a film student, so film noir was a big one, but really it was kind of going back to like the hard-boiled crime books that inspired all that, and even not even very old ones, but like James Ellroy, LA Confidential, his Los Angeles Quartet are like, holy texts for me. And then there's a whole lot of authors who've been inspired by him since. So that's definitely a through line in it. I'm a big fan of Donald E. Westlake, who would also write as Richard Stark.
Yeah.
Though those aren't necessarily noir, but they're crime, and especially when he's writing as Westlake as himself, there's like a real undercurrent of kind of absurdity and humor to it. So that's definitely a big part of it. And then I think maybe it's just Marco's influence. He's Italian. There's sort of like a very kind of Euro comics vibe to all of it. And a lot of the designs remind me of some cool Mobius, Metal Hurlant kind of styles. So it's just a big mashup of things. But I had a writing teacher many years ago who said like a good story is usually one good idea meets another good idea, and in the case of Tectiv, it's like, well, one good genre, noir, meets another good genre, post-apocalyptic fiction, and then just kind of mashing them together. So that was kind of genesis.
Fantastic. And I'm sure when it comes out, everybody will be reviewing it on our Indie Spotlight. So now's the time to go and check it out. Pre-order. I tell you guys all the time, pre-ordering is the lifeblood of the publishing industry. So definitely go and check it out. Richard, I want to thank you so much for taking the time. And I realized that kind of about halfway through, and then I was like, I guess we'll wait till the end. Hopefully people are still hanging out. I should have given you a chance at the beginning. Most of the time I do it at the end. I should have given you a chance at the beginning to talk about some of the other work that you've done, because you've worked on some stuff that people are definitely going to know. They might not know your name necessarily, but yeah, I should have done it at the beginning because it would have established your street cred in a way. But we'll do it now. Other things that you've worked on, other things that people should be on the lookout for, and where to find you online.
No, it's like there was like that old game show where the person would reveal themselves at the end.
Yeah,
So I'll just put that up. No, that's nice of you to say. I was lucky enough to work at DreamWorks Animation for a while. So I worked a lot on the How to Train Your Dragon franchise, on the movies, the TV show. I wrote some How to Train Your Dragon graphic novels for Dark Horse. Troll Hunters was another franchise that was really near and dear to my heart. I wrote a lot of books for them and was involved in that, and Three Below, which was a spin-off of it. But I've worked on, oh God, all those things, Kung Fu Panda, Trolls, not to be confused with Troll Hunters, a whole bunch of things. It was a pretty great place to work for about a decade. And, everything I learned about world building, I really learned there, especially on the Dragon movies. And so I guess I have to kind of tie it back to Tectiv. So much of the world building there is just based off of lessons that Dean, the writer-director, and the production designers and all the other art departments taught me when I was there.
Yeah, so again, apologies to everybody out there in the audience. I should have brought that up first, because if those are the type of movies you like, How to Train Your Dragon, which I know tons of kids that they're just beloved by, it's that sort of spirit of adventure and that youthful exuberance. Even though Scoop is, a very different genre, it still has that same kind of feel, and it can get kids excited about reading. So I wanted to be sure to get that in here. So, yeah, why don't you let everybody know where they can find you online, Richard, for these things that are coming up, or have questions, want to follow your work, that sort of thing. Where's the best place?
Yeah, I'm not great at social media, but I'm on X. At Regards Richard, and I'm on Instagram and Facebook under my full dorky name at Richard Ashkley Hamilton. So I'm not that hard to find. I'm just seldom on there. So if you message me, I'll get back to you. Just please be patient.
Yeah, sounds good. And I'll put links to the Instagram and the Twitter in the show notes, everybody. So if you're having trouble finding them, you can go and click there. So again, Richard, it's been a pleasure. It's been so much fun talking to you. Thank you so much for these stories. They're amazing. And I have Tectiv. I have my preview copy. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I'm definitely going to dig in. And yeah, I can't wait for volume 3 and 4 of Scoop.
Well, thank you, Jace. Thank you for the kind words and all the excellent questions. I think Sophie and the WMIA7 news team would be very proud. So
I appreciate you saying
that. Journalism.
Yeah, definitely. In another alternate reality, that was probably where the career path I ended up on. So, well, it's been a blast talking to you. Everybody out there in the audience, Richard and I both want to express our gratitude for you joining us, whether you're listening on the audio-only feed or checking us on YouTube. We want to thank you for the support. We appreciate you joining us as always, and we'll talk to you next time.